Hello, my name is Moses Campbell and I'm going to be interviewing you today. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jannette Barrett, aka Miss Lyricist B. I write poetry and I'm an author of 5 published books and articles, and I use art therapy in my main job, which is mental ill health in the community.
Come, my children, I need you. Come, I will embrace you and give you more than you can imagine. My streets are paved with gold, we were told.
My name's Ffrench. I'm an actor, writer, director. I'm known for being the longest playing black pantomime dame in the UK.
You'd get these looks sometimes, like stares, as if people had never seen anything like you before. But they must have seen black people in the films.
What is your link to the Windrush Generation?
My father was actually born in 1909. He was part of the American Naval Forces. So he was actually over here already way before the Windrush. And after he left the Naval Forces, he's had his severance pay and everything, and bought quite a large house. When the Windrush people started to come over in 1948 and beyond that period, he actually rented out the rooms upstairs in our house and actually helped establish some of the early Windrush people for natural housing, because we all know what was happening at that time with the Windrush people. They were going around trying to find houses to rent, and all they found was signs saying no coloureds, no Irish and no dogs. So to find my father's house, which had a sign to say all were welcome, then indeed we did have a multitude of families renting our rooms.
Some were nice and helpful, others not so.
My mother, or as we say in Jamaican dialect, my mother, she, like thousands of other people from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, came over in the 1960s. They were invited to come over and work in England and make it their home and help with the British economy, which is suffering post-war. And she became an auxiliary nurse.
So, were you born in England or the Caribbean?
Well, we are the first generation of Caribbean people born here, but the second generation of Windrush people that arrived. So we were born here, our parents were born in the Caribbean, but we're all British citizens.
In what way did the Windrush Generation impact your life?
My parents influenced my life in a positive way, obviously. I saw what they went through, the racism they encountered. In a kind of poetic way, they went through that so I didn't have to encounter it. It didn't quite work out that way. Racism is still thriving today, but it is better and it will get better as we move on in life. They taught me to have high morals, to be good, to behave myself, not to steal, and they infused how important education was, the free education we were allowed in Britain. And that was a path for them to success and to a better quality of life. And my mother taught me to be my own person and to be independent.
My next question is to you, Jannette. How did your parents' life have an effect on your life?
The work ethic is the main thing that my parents infused into me, because by the time I was born, my father was already semi-retired. You remember I said he was born in 1909. So by the time I came along, he was like 56, 57. So yeah, in those days, that was like you retired at 60. So he was verging on that. But he continued to work. He continued to go around in the community and help and do odd jobs and things like that. So he was never a sit-down man. And my mother just continued to work. But my mother was sick. My mother had cancer. Ever since I can remember, my mother had cancer. But she didn't divulge to us that she did. She just continued to work. She was definitely a cart horse woman. Resilient in every manner, and I think I've picked that work ethic and that resilience from her because I've been working slog out sometimes 4 jobs at the same time ever since I've been a teenager. Also behind that was a strong moral ethic as well, religious ethos, spiritual ethos, and a definite strong disciplinary ethos.
It wasn't gold. It was cold. No integration welcome, just rejection.
What experiences did you have growing up with your family?
Well, my father came from St. Lucia, so it's a small Caribbean island. From a teenager was brought up really in America. And then my mother, Jamaican. So with the St. Lucian and American, our food was Creole. So we always had a slightly different flair with our Saturday soup. Saturday soup, by the way, everyone, is something that I can think of every Black Caribbean household had. Specifically, we had our Saturday soup, and there's very different variations to it. Each variation must contain thyme, Scotch bonnet, and dumpling. As long as those 3 things are in there, you can add whatever else you want in there, whether it's lamb neck or pigtail or whatever. But thyme, Scotch bonnet, and dumpling.
And that was had, like you said, traditionally that was had on Saturdays, wasn't it? A Saturday dish, Saturday soup.
What did you do for entertainment?
Our music was the heart of the family. In my family, I don't know about yours, Dennis, but we had a gran, and it was kept in the special front room. And it was always highly polished with pledge. And then we would have this wonderful crocheted or embroidered mat on top, and doilies, and plastic over the furniture, plastic over the carpet. Nothing was allowed to get dirty in that. That was the special front room where guests would be invited, and they would be given drinks, and music would be played, and they would sit on this highly polished furniture. And children were not allowed to go in that room without permission.
Exactly the same. And ironically, you brought up music, and that was in the heart of my memories. Because we have to remember back then they weren't allowed to go into nightclubs, white nightclubs. There was a lot of racism about.
Some were nice and helpful. Others, not so.
Who came to the blues parties?
Our families and cousins and friends had to form their own entertainment, and that was creating their own nightclub, which they called a blues dance.
Dennis, our 2 houses when we were growing up, remember that my dad was already established? Well, we had the big house. So our blues party started off in that house first. And when we moved to a smaller house, we had a cellar.
Yes, so did we. A cellar, a dark cellar.
Whole man used to say, "Oh, gold,
That's right.
it's gold." We used to drop it in. So we cleared all of that out.
Yep.
And we had blues parties in our house because I had one brother who eventually joined the Navy as well. But his sound was called Apollo Hi-Fi Sound. And he got the name Apollo because of the moon landing.
Moon landing
Yeah,
in the 60s,
he took the name
yes.
from that. He took the name from that. And it was very attractive, Apollo. And everyone was like Shaka and all these different kind of sounds. But
That's right,
my
that's
brother
right.
chose Apollo. You know, because obviously my dad being in the American Navy and everything, so it was really American influence rather than Jamaican influence. Even then, with my dad amalgamating the Asians when they came over, whites and blacks in the household, my dad and my brother wanted to keep that going. He wanted to keep the diversity and the influx of all the cultures together in our house. We really wanted to integrate. When those parties or blues parties were going on in our house, there wasn't a sniff of racism.
No, it united people, didn't it, those parties?
It was there. It was like 2 anomalies, 2 different worlds, our house and the outside world.
So blues parties was bringing a taste of the Caribbean back to England in dark basements or cellars. Often these parties, these forms of enjoyment will be raided by the police and broken up. And that still continued in the 60s, 70s, 80s.